What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it's Friday, and that's it for E3. We made it through E3 2019. Next year, it looks like E3 2020 is going to start on June 9th. So we have quite a while until then, obviously about a full year, but it was pretty fun. I think it was one of the lower energy E3s compared to other years, but it was still a good time. A lot of video games getting announced, so overall, not too bad. Today we have some information to go over from E3 for the most part. We see a lot of interviews take place, of course, and a lot of information comes out of it. We also have a new product from Hori that seems to be Joycon controllers that maybe are better fit for people who think that the current ones are a bit cramped. And then we found out some more information about Breath of the Wild 2. While it's obviously in early development, they're still giving us a couple little bits of information to think about. As always, guys, enjoy these videos. Make sure you hit the like button. It helps out. And get subscribed as we go forward here. We finished up E3, but still a lot of games and a lot of stuff happening as we go forward towards some pretty big releases. Today, we're actually going to start with a very old release, actually one from back in like the mid-90s, talking 1995 for this one. Do you remember there was a Sailor Moon RPG that was only released in Japan? It's actually Sailor Moon Another Story as it translates over here, and fans did translate this one a while ago, but they actually finished fully localizing it now. A new patch has actually come out on ROM hacking that you can go check out, and it actually changes up some of the grammar and basically the expressions that are done in the game by characters, whereas before it was like a straight up translation, so you had some oddities in there and some strange bits of text. They've gone through, they've cleaned it up, and it's at this point, it's as close to an official release as probably we'll ever get. I don't know if we'll ever see that RPG brought over, although, hey, we just saw, Seiken Densetsu 3 come over, so I guess you never know. Also, while XCloud wasn't necessarily shown very well at E3, people did play it, and for the most part, they're pretty happy with it. They actually said the latency wasn't that bad. I say that bad as in acceptable for streaming, obviously, but it was actually decent enough to where you probably could play some games in a pinch on your cell phone with a controller. Well, what's odd about this is Phil Spencer seems to be talking with Windows Central about possibly making it a bundle with Game Pass. Now, they of course did their Xbox Live Ultimate that throws everything in for $15 a month, which has Game Pass on the Xbox, Xbox Live, and then Game Pass on the PC, and he's actually talking about it packaging in as well, so XCloud would probably become part of that. Basically, if you have Xbox Live Ultimate, the $15 a month thing, it seems that it'll also include the ability to stream through XCloud. My question is, will there be a more expensive tier for 4K streaming, similar to what Stadia is doing? Because Stadia is, of course, giving away essentially 1080p at 60 frames per second next year, so I expect XCloud to basically just do that as a pack in with Game Pass. But what about that 4K service? That's the question I'd want Phil Spencer to answer here is, will there be tiered options, or is it seriously just gonna be everything's just bundled in? If you have Game Pass or if you have this Xbox Live Ultimate, you just have XCloud. Oh, and do you know how we had Square Enix find seemingly the Final Fantasy VIII source code so that they could remaster it as they announced at E3? Well, it seems like they've pretty much lost a lot of source code, which is, as they say themselves, CEO talked to Game Informer, an embarrassing thing. Yeah, I'd agree, although apparently back in the 90s, they would actually get rid of the source code or store it in places that they seem to have forgotten about to free up space. But anyway, it looks like they're actually committing heavily to basically taking all of their older titles and actually making them available digitally. So, I mean, you could go back and think of a bunch. Xenogears is a good one, for example, just throwing it out there. And then they actually want to take it and also make them a subscription-based service. So would that work? Would you be able to go subscription-based service with Square's games? I actually think you could, because their offerings are pretty good. And the other question is, how much would that be? Although we are talking at this time of adding on more subscription service on top of subscription services that we already have, and that's not exactly a future I want to go towards, but the Square library is pretty deep with titles. They just got to find the source code. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. We're actually going to start with Hori's new controller, or two controllers, I guess. They appear to be Joycon replacements for handheld play. Here's actually a picture of them. They were at E3 demoing these things. I know Kevin Kenson got a chance to go hands-on with them. He has a full video on it, and to be honest, I looked at that and I said, that would actually work for some people people who seem to think that the Joy-Con controllers are a bit cramped, and yeah, I get that actually. When I look at them and I use them, the one problem I have with the Joy-Con are the sticks. The travel they're not great with those sticks, and what's interesting about this is it looks like Hori has just thrown on a complete joystick. Like, it's not like one of those half-step ones that we have with the Joy-Con controllers. Like, take your Joy-Con controller, look at the thumbstick there, and then go look at thumbsticks on your Pro controller. Much more travel to the Pro controller stick, and it looks like that's what they have on these. But yes, they do look a bit odd, obviously, but they are there to create, I guess, a bit more bulk for you to hold or grab onto when you're playing any of your games. And it looks like they also have a button on the back that you can assign buttons to as a macro button. But here's the thing about the macro button I see. I'm concerned about it getting in the way and having accidental presses. The Astro C40 PlayStation 4 controller, that's pretty expensive, has a button on the back of each side. They're very, very much harder to press, so they have more tension to them, and that's what I would recommend Hori does here. Now, it looks like they won't actually work off of the Switch. They are going to need to be attached, similar to their other Joy-Con that they did that had a D-pad, but no battery or anything else in it. The issue we ran into there was it was very light and it felt kind of odd, but the D-pad actually worked well enough for a lot of people, and this one also has a D-pad, so it actually kind of looks like, I guess, an evolution of the whole thing, and they seem to be launching it alongside of Daemon Ex Machina. That actually seems to be kind of the marketing that's around, and in Japan, it's going to launch for roughly $45 to $50, similar how it's going to launch here in the US after Hori's USA Twitter handle tweeted it out. So we can look forward, I guess, in September for about $50 for the pair of controllers, which that's not terrible, I guess. I mean, if you look at a pair of Joy-Con controllers, they're what, $80, right? So I guess $50, but keep in mind it won't have the same functionality. It's going to be handheld only. Now, gyro should still work because gyro is actually built into the Switch itself and the tablet. That's why things like Labo work without the Joy-Con controllers on it. So I think this could work, but I'm going to do my best to check them out because I am curious about how they will feel in the hands, but they definitely look like they'll give you a bit more room to like hold on to when you're playing. And of course, the macro button on the back is also interesting, and then the joysticks. So we'll see what we come up with later on in September. Next up, we saw Phantasy Star Online 2, right? We saw it at the Xbox conference. It was pretty awesome to see them bring it over. Very weird to see that it was Microsoft and the Xbox that was bringing it over, but they were doing it, and that was awesome. So we all figured, okay, I guess we'll play it on our Xbox, and that'll be fine. Probably on PC because kind of the initiative, of course, that Microsoft is doing is you should be able to play your games anywhere. So, okay, you want to play it on PC? That's fine. Play it on your Xbox? That works, you know. Windows across the board, or apparently on your phone as well soon with XCloud. Well, it seems that's not actually the case. In fact, in an interview with Giant Bomb, Phil Spencer actually said that it's coming to all platforms, like it's coming to all consoles. He made that very clear when he was talking with Jeff Gerstmann about it. So I guess Phantasy Star Online 2 is going to be coming to the PlayStation 4 and the Switch, and maybe it'll have cross-play, cross-progression even. I mean, I could see it with something like the Xbox and the Switch. The PS4, it's always still touch and go with the PlayStation 4 when it comes to crossplay or cross progression. Seems Destiny 2 managed to get cross progression. Then we see, of course, other games like Rocket League get crossplay. So I'd like to think Sony is getting a bit better with it, but to hear that it's coming to platforms outside of Xbox, because we originally thought that was going to be it, is really, really cool. My question here, though, is with the Switch version, will it be a cloud-based one that they would have to use Azure for and, you know, XCloud and everything? Because if you look in Japan, it's streaming there. It's actually called Phantasy Star Online 2 Cloud Edition or Cloud version or whatever. If they could actually bring it over legitimately, put it on a cartridge, and then, or they just put it out and say, hey, look, you got to have a big SD card. Okay, this is an MMO. It racks up a lot of space. Sorry, it's 40 gigabytes. Most people would say, well, all right, you know what? I want to play it. It's an MMO. I get it. I guess I'll buy the SD card. Next up, let's talk about Breath of the Wild 2. It was, of course, the last thing they announced during the Nintendo E3 Direct. It was awesome. People got really excited for it, but there wasn't a ton of information in that trailer. We could figure out that it appeared like it was going to take place in the same setting, which was exciting, and it does appear that Al Numa and others have talked a bit about this to places like Game Informer and Kotaku. They did say that it will take place in the same Hyrule that we've played in with Breath of the Wild, the first one, which is good. I'm going to actually come back to that in a second. But then there were some other little interesting things. They seem to be referencing Majora's Mask because, of course, that had a very quick 1-year dev cycle after Ocarina of Time, and to the point where they had to use an expansion pack to figure out the whole time situation where time was restarting and everything. That was a whole thing as well. But they got it done very quickly, and Aonuma even joked about that, saying, that's not good, that's why, I have gray hair. It's because of those kind of dev cycles. Seems like Nintendo's kind of backed off of those kind of things, as we've seen, talked about yesterday with Animal Crossing and Crunch. Well, it does look like it's going to be a darker story than what we saw in Breath of the Wild. I read through some of the bits of him talking about it, and people were thinking it sounded like he was saying it's going to be darker than Majora's Mask, but to be honest, I don't know how it can be darker than Majora's Mask was pretty dark. If you go back and look at it, it is crazy. People going about their day knowing that they're about to be crushed by the moon. It's very depressing if you really think about it. And then, of course, you play as other heroes who have died, and you go back to see their relatives and their friends, and it's very... It's not a happy game, I'll say that, but to hear that this is darker than Breath of the Wild, the first one, is great, and that's kind of what the entire trailer tried to tell us, from the music choice to, of course, we see the corpse and everything at the end. Yeah, it wasn't exactly a bright and colorful game, but what's also interesting is Aonuma was asked several times about multiple playable characters, because of course we saw Zelda there next to Link, and people were wondering, wait a minute, does that mean we get to play as Zelda? And Aonuma did not want to answer this at all, saying, I can't talk about that right now, even to the point where they were trying to trick him up and saying, well, how many playable characters are there? Once again, he can't say. I mean, if Link was the only playable character, you would say, oh, it's just Link. There's just one player, that's it, no one else. Maybe we actually get to play as Zelda in this game. It would actually kind of make sense after the first Breath of the Wild. And that could actually kind of put in some really cool elements, maybe switch between them. The idea, by the way, that they are sticking with what we saw before, the same world and everything, means that they don't have to recreate that world. They can build on top of it. That's the exciting part to me. Do they keep the shrines? We're not sure. Maybe they don't. Maybe they go with a more traditional dungeon setup and they leave Breath of the Wild as its own thing rather than try to make an entire other Breath of the Wild. Leave that how it is and, maybe change things up, but in the same world. It's exciting stuff, and trust me, little bits of information like this that we've talked about will continue to come out until maybe next year, maybe next E3, we'll find out a bit more about the game. I do wonder how far off in development it is. Is this a holiday 2020 game? Is this a holiday 2021 game? That's the question now, is how far in development is it actually? Because Monolith's been hiring like crazy, and it seems like this is their main focus right now for the Zelda team, with, of course, Link's Awakening just about out. Finally, our last bit of news, let's talk about Daemon Ex Machina, because of course it's out in September, and we actually talked about it here in a video, kind of about what we would like to see improved, because they released a beta for people to try out, and they specifically wanted feedback. And a lot of times when a developer wants feedback, they're generally looking to make some changes, and they made a ton of changes to Daemon Ex Machina. I'm going to leave a video down below in the sources where you can go check it out after Nintendo actually posted on Twitter a ton of stuff that, they changed an obscene amount. One criticism where the weapons didn't really have a lot of impact, so they kind of upped the sound, and they'll probably have some vibration there too, but they definitely upped the sound on it to make it feel more impactful when you're actually firing your weapon. Another thing I had an issue with was if you go out of bounds, it kind of just walks you back in and it leaves you up for getting just tagged and everything and destroyed by enemies. Well, when you go out there, a timer starts, like I actually said in the video, and it counts down and you got to get back in bounds. And they even have a marker where if you go way too far out there, you just lose. And that's something that made a lot of sense. Ascending and descending is faster now, and they have gyro controls. There is just an obscene amount of stuff that they have been working on. And that's what I like to see. I don't know if Daemon Ex Machina is going to sell very well, but I want it to be good. So I'm glad they took the criticism seriously, knowing that people wanted the game to be better. It kind of gives me some Octopath vibes, by the way, as Octopath Traveler kind of started out, remember Project Octopath? They looked for a lot of feedback, and they made a ton of changes. I like this because that's the point of a beta, is that we try it, and then we tell you things. It's not one of those situations where, oh guys, we're gonna have a beta and then the game's out next week. you're playing the final build. At least with Daemon Ex Machina, we legitimately played an early build, and now they're changing it for the better, so good stuff there. And we'll finish up today with the comment from yesterday. This is actually, as you're seeing here, from Adam Banks saying, Pokemon never takes full advantage of hardware, simple as that. I actually disagree a bit there. Now, I do think there are some times where Pokemon will phone it in. I think a lot of people look at Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon and kind of think that. I think Sun and Moon actually pushed the 3DS very hard. Like, I think they got a lot of that hardware. And then if you go way back, I mean, like way back, Red and Blue were like revolutionary for that Game Boy. Like, to play that game of that scope on a Game Boy was insane. I would even say Ruby and Sapphire, when I saw them, they weren't too bad. But yeah, I kind of get what you're saying when they got a little further up. There were definitely some games where they phoned it in, but I can't say that it's that case every single time. When I see Red and Blue on the Game Boy, and then I see Sun and Moon on the 3DS, there were some legitimate times where they pushed the hardware, but not every time. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it's Breath of the Wild 2, what are your crazy theories on the game? I'm thinking that there's gonna be a lot of people trying to guess and figure out every little bit about that trailer and try to piece together where this game is going. It's fun stuff. It's exciting stuff when the new Zelda game is announced and coming out. Then also, let me know what you think about Daemon Ex Machina and the changes that they're making, because I think the game is better now, but I'm still curious if it's gonna be good enough to sell really well. We'll see. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.